Today is March the 8th of 2023, and today we are here with Mike Yazbek, who's running for the AC Board of Regents. Mike, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Let's tell the voters why you're running for the AC Board of Regents.
Well, for the last few years, Amarillo College has done really great, and then we've got a new president over there that has decided to put in policies that are playing into the idea of woke rather than educating the kids, rather than being a college where people learn something. They're trying to turn around and say, well, we have to do this and we have to do that, and it doesn't really play into the real world of business. And a community college is designed to prepare people for the work. But instead, they're preparing people to be victims instead of leaders. And so it's time to bring some people in and say, look, enough is enough. We've got to turn around and teach these young adults how to be mature and responsible. No, we're not going to tolerate the stuff that he's trying to block, but it's never been tolerated anyway. The people that have been there quite a number of years, and maybe it's time for some new blood. And instead of indoctrinating, we need to be educating.
So what? So you think it's the president of Amarillo College?
It's not just the president, it's the whole culture coming up. The standard is being lowered for what Amarillo College needs, which means these kids have no skills coming into college. When they come out of high school, they're not being taught what they need to be taught in order to survive. And the college is having to have remedial education classes to get these kids up to college level. So if we can raise the standard before they get to the college, we can force the public schools to turn around and start teaching what they need instead of what they want.
Well, the governor was here recently, and he's pushing vouchers for education. How do you think that will affect our public schools?
I think maybe the public schools need to lose funding if they're not going to teach the kids how to read, write, and do math. If they allow these kids to go in with handheld calculators and not know how to do math, when the computers go down, restaurants shut down because everything ties into a central computer somewhere. When Taco Bell's computer went down in Wichita, Kansas, every Taco Bell in town shut down because nobody knew how to write a ticket by hand. Nobody knew how to run a register by hand. Nobody knows even how to count change without the computer telling them. So these things need to be taught in 4th and 5th grade, but if we allow this to come into the college levels without these kids having these skills, then this is just going to continue to happen. We are a third world country when it comes to our workforce because they just don't have the skills that every kid around the world normally has.
So what's your background that would qualify you to be a regent on the AC board?
My background is I've owned my own companies. I owned a cab company here twice, or it owned me, whichever. I've owned my own sharpening business now for 8 years. It's just I've also been on the parish council at St. John's Orthodox Church, which is basically the same thing. It's an oversight board that actually runs the business of the college and makes the approvals. If something needs to be done, we look at it and say yes or no. And unfortunately, there are too many yes people on there. Instead of saying, do we really need this, or is something more important over here? Everybody wants to see the shiny stuff instead of going back in and working on the nuts and bolts of the education system. They want to do what looks good, and there's nothing wrong with having new buildings, but we've got a 100-year-old college that's teaching modern philosophy instead of teaching subjects and skills, and we need to get back to teaching skills.
So get back to basics.
Back to basics.
So you also have had a career in radio, is that right?
Well, matter of fact, I got my education at Amarillo College. I went there first and then Columbia School of Broadcasting until they closed, and then went into radio in Dallas. I couldn't get a job here because of some personal animosity, but that's another story. But again, it's the radio and TV. We've got one of the only public television stations that's at a college campus. It's a live station. We have the only 365-day-a-year college radio stations, and it's not a 90-minute reel station or not a completely computerized station like most of these college stations are. This one has live announcers. They do live news. They do all kinds of things. They teach radio. They teach television. They teach production, and it's a very wonderful program. And they've got their equipment is newer than most radio and television stations in the country. So we need courses like this. We have a great trucking program here. If you go to a trucking school elsewhere, you're going to pay $15,000 to $20,000. Here, you're going to pay about $2,200 because it is a tax-supported school. It's a public school. It's not private. We have continuing education. We have all sorts of things for people that don't want the credit, but they want to learn something. This school even had ballooning here, hot air ballooning. It came in the 80s, and it was taught by Buzz Wills, who went around the world in a balloon. So Amarillo College has had some pretty amazing courses over its life. And in order to continue that, the skill set needs to be higher for these kids coming in so that they can handle this instead of having to spend an extra 2 or 3 semesters catching up.
Well, it's my understanding that Amarillo College is one of the best schools of its nature in the country.
It is, but it used to be the best. It's slipping because they're having to do the remedial education. If they can turn around and weed out the remedial education and make these skill sets required before you can get in, then what will happen is it will open up classroom space for even more programs, such as technical programs or other subjects. It will open things up so that we can expand what the college is teaching, and we can bring Amarillo College back to the top instead of somewhere near the top. It's a great school, don't get me wrong, but it used to be that MIT, Harvard, and the biggest schools in the country would look at Amarillo College and they would pick and choose kids they wanted to give scholarships to. These kids wouldn't have to go looking. Now the kids have to go applying. But I say kids, these young adults, if we can bring this back to the forefront like it was, then those universities will come back and look again and say, here we are. Hey, look, we understand this is, you've got this. Because what happens in the academic level goes into a national registry. The dean's list goes into a national registry. It's published, and these universities definitely look for it. And if we can bring this back up, then we can have people like Carrie Flugel, who went from Amarillo College to NASA. And when she went to NASA, she became the voice of NASA during the shuttle launches. She was the woman's voice you heard. She went to Amarillo College. Larry Keenan went to the NBA from Amarillo College, played for the Spurs, had an all-star career. There are people like this that are too numerous to mention that went to major locations out of Amarillo College, and it still happens, but not as much because they're not the number one school it used to be.
So your main concern is not Amarillo College, it's that the AISD and the local school districts are not producing the product that Amarillo College needs.
No, and Amarillo College is accepting that instead of saying, wait a minute. It's up to the colleges and universities to be selective about the students we accept. Even though it's a community college, you have to apply to those colleges and those universities. It's easier to get accepted into a university when the standard is higher from a junior college. And that's what Amarillo College is a junior college. If we raise the standards, we can get these kids through their prerequisites, and then they can go to the major universities with scholarships and not incur so much major debt in these big student loans. They don't have to do that. They can go in with scholarships and come out a lot better. There's just so much more that we can do that, and it doesn't cost anything to raise the standards. It costs us not to raise the standards. It's better for the students because we can open up those courses, and if there's less fighting for space, then again we can have more subjects available. We can have more courses available. We can add to the staff. We can do what needs to be done in a community. But community college is designed to get these kids through the basics, and for those who have already who can place out of the basics, to start them into their majors. And it's amazing what there is available. It's just that we have to raise the standard in order to get to the point to get those things opened back up.
So, what is the primary role, I guess, of the Board of Regents?
The primary role is to oversee the professors and the instructors, uh, to oversee the budget especially, and to set the rates for the taxes. And that's another thing. If we can turn around and slow down all these outrageous expenditures for what? For new buildings? Uh, Buildings don't create students, instructors do. If you get an instructor in there that wants to push a political agenda instead of teaching a course, what good is that? And these universities and colleges like to tenure these guys, and that's a pet peeve of mine also. I would like to see tenure go away for everybody, because then there's responsibility to teach the subject matter. But the Board of Regents is basically the overseers of the college. They're the ones that have to approve or disapprove anything the college needs to do or wants to do. They're the ones that have to have the wisdom to say, yes, we need it, or we can afford it without raising the cost. If we need it, we need it. That's understood. But if we just want it and it's going to raise the cost, why should we do that instead of saying, let's look into this a little bit further and see what we can do to make this happen without having to raise taxes and without having to put the burden back on the taxpayers.
So, why should they vote for you instead of your opponents?
Because I'm a working man. I've been out there, and I'm tired of seeing these boards of regents act like a bunch of country clubs and rubber stamps for folks. That's what it's been for the last few years, and it's not an intentional thing. But complacency. It's time for new blood. There are people that have been there upwards of 20 years on that board. They need to move on to other things. They need to move on to other places where their expertise can be helped or can be used. It's time to bring in people to take over those positions and let them. Some of them possibly at retirement age. It's just one of those things that we need fresh blood on these boards all the time to bring in fresh ideas in the community, fresh experience, and more enthusiasm rather than a familiarity with the people that are going to turn around and say, well, I want to make this donation, but this is what I want. Now, donations and things like that should not be based on what I want. It should be based on the goodness of our hearts to help our future that's going to come in and benefit us by bringing us employees that know what the heck they're doing.
Yeah, they're educating the future leaders of our area.
Of the nation. We have people from all across the country that want to come to Amarillo College because it is such a good college, and it is a great college. Don't get me wrong. I'm not putting them down for that. It's just that they're starting to slip, and we need to turn around, and maybe it's time to change the tires on the car. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The Board of Regents acts like the tires. They steer the school. They make the approvals of who gets hired and who gets fired. And sometimes when something happens, the board tends to close ranks and not want to talk about it. They want to be private. They want to cover themselves instead of saying, wait a minute, maybe we have a problem. They don't want to admit there's a problem sometimes. Just like school boards. If somebody has a problem with the schools, try to get the schools to turn around and correct something. They won't do it. They stand on the side of the teachers instead of actually investigating and saying, whoa, we've got a problem. And then the next thing you see is it's on the news because somebody's had to go file charges. Instead of weeding out the bad and bringing in the good all the time, instead of vetting these people and keeping them vetted. Once they're there, all right, we've got him. We don't have to worry about him. No, you always have to worry. These are things that the Board of Regents should be proactive in. And again, it's like being married to the school. It's just that we get complacent about things, and it's human nature. It's not. I'm not putting anybody down for it. But it's time for a fresh set of eyes to come in and say, whoops, what's going on here? And that's why I want to run. And the reason I chose to run is because in December, I was in Newburgh, New York. And the day before I was supposed to go to work as Santa Claus at the Newburgh Mall, I was sitting in my hotel room, and my back door opened up, and I could see George Washington's headquarters from during the Revolutionary War. So I took a tour. They let me sit behind that desk. And the feeling that comes up into your throat when you sit behind a desk like that, realizing the history that was made from the decisions that were made at that location, and to be able to touch that piece of history so that we could have the opportunity to live the life we live now, the way we live it. It would be a dishonor not to get up and step up and take part and run for this office. It would be a dishonor to not only George Washington, but for the literally hundreds of thousands of people that took part in that war that made us who we are today.
Well, I commend anybody willing to step up and run for public office. It takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of work. It's self-sacrifice, and I commend all of you that are doing it. And I think, to your point, I believe people are starting to realize that they've been complacent and they haven't paid attention to these local races. And I think they're realizing how important that our local community is. It's more important than the national, more important than the state, because what we're doing, electing our AC Board of Regents and school board members and city council members, that's the country. That's America. So if we don't pay attention to these positions, that's how we lose our soul.
Well,
as a nation.
These positions are the foundation of our country.
Exactly.
The foundation of our country is the voter, and we need to get more people involved. And unfortunately, the universities and colleges are becoming political institutions that are trying to take us away from the ideals of the Republic of the United States. There was even a bill introduced this week into the Texas legislature for Texas to become independent. I'm not sure that that's a good idea. We are the leaders of this nation. As they say, as Texas goes, so does the rest of the nation. And so but we're the basis for that. We are the locals. Without the local, you can't have the state. Without the state, you don't have a nation. So we have to turn around and build this foundation and start the foundation correctly. If you don't, the foundation is going to shift like it's starting to do, and then you've got to turn around and shore it back up. And it's time to step back in and say, all right, enough of this. We're not teaching what we need to teach. We're kowtowing to the few instead of educating the many. So it's time to educate the many again. It's time to. There's what we call a revolution. There's a reawakening from the woke folk to the re-woke folk, which is the people that are saying, nope, that's not what we're here for. And we need to put a stop to it because this is the socialization of America. They see the good things of a society, a utopian society, but they don't see the cost of that. They don't see that you have to sell your soul to have your pleasure now. They don't see the fact that it takes a lot of work to build up over time. We're in an I want it right now generation, and the I want it right now is not the way it works, because as soon as you get it, there's something better. So it's time to sit back and say, no, we need to bring our manufacturing back to this country. We need to know what we're doing. We need to be able to build what we want to build, but we've got to be able to calculate that too. We've got to be able to not only write something down, but we've got to be able to use proper grammar. The rest of the world is laughing at us. Every time I've gone over to the overseas, those people see what's being put out on the internet by educated people, and they can't even turn around and use proper grammar. It's ridiculous the way it's going on, and this is because we've allowed the school systems to fail. Even the teachers teaching this are making those mistakes, and it's not the new correct. It's wrong, and they're teaching what it's right for him. Well, that's not the way it should be. There's a story about a kid that his teacher asked him how to spell park, and he said P-A-R-C-K, and she said, that's not how you spell it. The kid said, no, that's you asked me how I spell it. And we're not, unfortunately now the parents will listen to the child. They won't side with the teacher when Johnny's got a problem. Well, my kid doesn't have a problem. This is the attitude that's been pervasive that's allowed this to happen. And we need to turn around and say, no, it doesn't work here. That attitude, you want that attitude, you go somewhere else. We're going to teach this, whether you learn it or not. You pay your tuition, you come in and learn. We need to get back to the way the colleges were, that they didn't care if you, they cared if you showed up, and they cared about you as a people. But if you didn't learn it, oh well, take it next semester. They didn't care if you couldn't do the work. What they cared about was the fact that you learned it and you could do it at the end. If you didn't show up, that's on you. There's no responsibility anymore. They made you responsible for yourself, and now there's no responsibility for anybody. And again, that comes from this pervasive society that we've come to know over the last 20 years. And we need to put a stop to it. And the only way to put a stop to it is when we get these young adults coming in and saying, nope, this is the real world. And this is where you learn about the real world. You don't learn about the funny stuff they're trying to teach you. You learn about the nuts and the bolts. You can learn all the philosophy you want, but it's still not going to help you start the car. If you're a mechanic, you don't need philosophy. You need your wrenches, you need your tools, your screwdrivers, and you need the proper parts to put in. All the philosophy in the world is not going to make that car run. That mechanic will. And without him knowing math, without him knowing how to do things in his head, without a calculator, he's not much of a mechanic. He's just a machine reader. You've got to be a craftsman. We've got to go back to making all our businesses a craft. If you're an office manager, that's great. If you're a secretary, that's great. If you're a mechanic, great. If you're an electrician, that's great. Anything you want to do, you still have to have the skills.
So they can code, but they can't compute.
Right.
So they need to be able to compute.
And if the computer goes down, they're lost.
And teach some deductive reasoning skills and things that will benefit them in the real world.
Right. And what's going on is these kids are being taught what to think. They're not being taught how to think, and we need to change that.
Diversity, Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI.
You might as well have a DUI.
Well, to me, that's where DEI should DIE.
Well, again, if you have zero tolerance for people knocking each other in the head for who they are, then that should do it right there. I'm not for anybody not being allowed to participate. If you want to participate, come in. Leave the politics out the door when it comes to hockey. Leave the politics out the door when you're on the football field.
Sure.
Play the game. There's nowhere in that rule book that says this.
Yeah, we all want the same things.
Use the rule book, and that rule book says everybody can participate until you make this mistake.
What they're doing now is substituting politics for religion.
Well, politics is a religion if you think about it, because people live and die by it. And unfortunately, this country was founded with certain inalienable rights by a common creator. Read the founding documents. They're based on religion.
Sure.
Thomas Jefferson had said that this country is based on a Judeo-Christian principle, and it is. We've got 10 commandments that we base all of our laws on. 10 simple commandments that everybody has a hard time following.
Yeah.
So it's time to step forward and say, look, we need to educate people. One of the prime examples of the way the college has changed its way of thinking about the students is there didn't used to be a speed zone on 24th Street between Jackson Street and Washington. Now they've got a 20-mile-an-hour speed zone, even though they've got a catwalk for everybody. It's a school zone now. Well, it's a place where adults are. Maybe they just need to lower the whole speed limit to 20 miles an hour like WT did. Lower the speed limit. Don't worry about the speed zone. That's a revenue thing. And I've actually talked to our SREC member, who's also on the Amarillo Traffic Advisory Council, or commission, or committee. Or I've talked to Tom, and he's looking at that, and this is indicative of what's going on with society. We're not playing to the smartest like every other country does, and that's why we're sliding into the third world. We're now second rate. Russia's third rate, the way they're thinking right now, and it's evidenced by the way they're losing people at 1,000 a day in their war. We have to have people that know how to think, period. Not
Well,
what to think, but how to think. The what to think, that comes outside.
and we have to teach them that in the real world, it's competitive.
And in the real world, there are two sides to every argument, and we need to teach people to, hey, okay, you may have your feelings, but but other people's rights don't end where your feelings begin. Now, this is not what's being taught. They're saying, well, you don't count because you've got these feelings. You count, but this guy over here has these rights, but he doesn't. And this is what's wrong, and it's coming in. And again, if you turn around and stop that and nip that in the bud, and say, look, we're not going to put up with you talking like this about these people. That's your right to feel that way, but don't push it off on everybody else.
Yeah.
And that comes from both sides, because one side says, well, we want this, but we don't want to listen to you. Well, if you don't listen to us, you may miss an important fact that could save your life, or save your money, or give you a hint on how to become independent of anybody else's money. It could work, and it's divided this country so far that it's unreal, that the 9% of the people are pushing around the other 91. And it needs to stop.
Yeah, they don't give up. They don't give in. They just keep coming.
They want tolerance, but they don't have any.
That's right. They're hypocrites.
So it's, I'm one of these kind of people. If you want to do whatever you want to do, you do that in your private life. When you're here, we have this goal.
Yeah.
Put on the jersey. If it's got a number on the back, you play your position, and you play it by the rules. Play the rules. If everybody plays the rules, everything else is irrelevant. And all of a sudden, we become a team, and all of a sudden, we think, maybe that's not such a bad person after all. He might have said something stupid. God knows we all do. If we don't, then the news media has to go home. Which some of them, and anymore, and this is the other part, is the fact that the news media has become so prevalent in over one side over the other, because they've been indoctrinated over the last few years, that they don't realize that what they're saying is 100% against what John Kennedy would have wanted. John Kennedy would be a Republican today, and they would probably tear him down like they've done everybody else. We've spent the last 6 years tearing down a man who's been gone for almost a year and a half now, for 2 years really. And why? Why are we wasting the time? Are they afraid he's going to come back? Probably, because he's going to put them right back on notice that they're doing wrong. But he's opened the door for a lot of other people to come in and take a challenge also. But everybody wants to say, well, this, and this. Well, they don't even know the history of this country. They don't know the documents. They don't know, because they're being taught other things than what they need to be taught. Again, the skill set. It all comes back to education, not indoctrination.
All right. Well, do you have a website?
Not yet. The only website I've got is the gopconnect.com. We haven't built the website yet. We're working on it. As soon as we do, we'll post that on GOP Connect. And it's just, I feel the best thing I can do is get out and be at places like Hodgetown. Tonight I'm going to be out at the Globetrotters and handing out cards there. Places where people go. People like to gather at places that are fun. No politics, just fun. But hey, I'm running for Board of Regents. Think about me and hand them a business card. It's just something that I want to connect with people. We need everybody's input on how the college needs to run, what people would like to see at the college. We've got baseball back for the first time in 52 years. I think that's great. Why cross country? Because basketball was too expensive to recruit for? Where do you get the cross-country kids? You get the kids from around the area. That's fine. But the basketball, I don't know of anybody that's a professional cross-country runner. We don't see that. You might see some Olympic runners. I'd put it in, but why not golf? The city of Amarillo has an unused golf course sitting out at the old Amarillo Air Base, which is where the East Campus for Amarillo College is. There's a 36-hole golf course that is still defined out there by the fairways and the greens. You can still see them. That thing hasn't been used since Bell Helicopter was out there at the old air base. And it could be it could be redone. It could be put in for both the college and the school systems to bring up young golfers. It's an Arnold Palmer designed course. He designed it for the United States Air Force. We've got some wonderful assets that aren't being used that we could put that in. And how many people play golf compared to how many people run cross country? You have to fight for a tee time now. Amarillo College could get that, and it would be a great revenue builder for the college. Open it up, open it to the public, $20, $30 green fee for everybody to play. You've got 36 holes times 4 at $20 a pop, 36 times 80 every day. So we've got some great things out there that could build revenue and could really be good. Why wouldn't they put a NASCAR team in? It's an NCAA sport. They could do that, and then once a year, the big thing to do would be go down to or get into NASCAR West. If somebody had to build a track, that could happen too. But NASCAR also runs dirt track. They could run out here at the dirt track here. There are plenty of things that could be done that because it's too expensive to recruit for basketball, but it's not as expensive to recruit for cross country. It's just as expensive. That's an excuse. Let's get something that more people will attend, and that they can attend in one spot. This is some of the things that I was kind of sad when basketball went away the first time because Kelly Chadwick ran a great women's program. Olivia Johnson, O.J. Johnson, back in 81 through 84, was one of the tops in my book. And she ended up going to the WNBA, and then she ended up being a women's coach. She's retired in Albuquerque now. But we've had all kinds of programs that have really been wonderful. And part of the thing about the sports program is now you've got something that the Amarillo College kids can go with their radio, television, and actually do some live broadcast work and get some real-time experience. This is where the labs come in. This is where the good things come in. But without the experiences or without the knowledge, then what do you have? We have a top-flight, state-of-the-art movie studio here, right downtown in the old Amarillo Senior Citizen Center, the old Amarillo High School. Mm-hmm. And there are major production companies coming in and using it. WT and Amarillo College have partnered with them. This is something that kids can learn and move into the industry and go top flight with. It's wonderful. We have top flight music programs here. Both Amarillo College and WT have wonderful music programs. The academics, again, if you can pass a chemistry course in Amarillo, you can go to college anywhere and do it. It's easier to get into Texas Tech School of Pharmacy if you've gone through Amarillo to learn your prerequisites, to learn your chemistry your chemistry programs, your math programs, your organic chemistry. Those things, if you can get through the organic chemistry here, you can go to school anywhere. It's just there are so many things that we have that we're pulling away from it, and we're allowing kids to come in that just can't do the work. So we need to raise the standards so that they can do the work, so that they can go to the schools, so that they can do what they want. All right, so if we get a NASCAR team here, what are those kids going to learn? We have an auto mechanics program, so it wouldn't be a problem to put it in out there. It's a wonderful auto mechanics program. What do those kids learn? They learn how to fix your car. They're the ones that get ASE certified. The car dealerships send students there so that they can get them certified to do the warranty work. So Amarillo College has a lot of things to offer that aren't just white collar. They have a lot of technical things. Like I said, the truck driving school is top rated. These kids do about 2,000 miles in the trucks before they're allowed to graduate from it. Before they do that, they have to know the rules and regulations. They have to learn how to shift. you have to learn how to back one of those things up. And if anybody's ever tried to back a trailer up, then you know what I'm talking about. It's a special skill. It's not hard to learn it, but it's hard to teach it if you don't know what you're doing. We have people out there that know absolutely what they're doing. The big companies come in and recruit out of the school all the time. They look for the top 5%. And it's just, when we've got programs that get these kids into $60,000 and $70,000 a year starting wage, entry-level jobs, you're doing something right. It's just that we need to focus more on the teaching of the nuts and bolts rather than the why. Let's teach them how. Let them figure out the why on their own as extra credit.
All right, Mike. Well, I really appreciate you coming in. And is there anything else you'd like to tell the voters?
I want to tell the voters, if you haven't taken part in any of the primaries, and then the subsequent precinct meetings afterwards, that's the most important part of a primary race. Is you pick your candidates that you want to be on the agenda, but then you've got to pick your delegates. Become a precinct delegate. Become a precinct chairman. I had to resign from my post as precinct chair because I moved. So 427 needs a precinct chair. That's up there on the north side of Amarillo, up there, not too far from the United Supermarkets up in that area.
Ridgemere to Boulevard. It's a very small precinct.
It's not a big precinct, but it's an important precinct. You'd be surprised how many people just don't know how to take part. You become a precinct delegate, you become a precinct chair. You elect your county delegates. You go to your county meetings. You elect your state delegates. Go to those state conventions. They're fun. I love going to those things because you never know who you're going to meet. I got to meet the governor at his request because of a T-shirt that I have, and it's just one of those things that I decided it was casual. I was going to wear a T-shirt, so I wore that thing, and the governor's wife came over, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, come with us. I thought I was in trouble, and the governor said, no, he wants a picture with that shirt. Okay. And Dan, you were there. It was just one of those things. You get to meet people. We got to have lunch with Ted Cruz, for crying out loud. He couldn't get a seat, and we said, hey, we've got extra room here. If he'd like to sit with us, he bought our lunch. And it's just one of those things. One morning, we were in our senatorial caucuses, in our senatorial district caucuses to elect our state Republican Executive Committee members, and Lieutenant Governor came in, and it's just one of those things. They're just the people you meet from around the state, and then from there we elected our national delegates. The national delegates are the ones that chose the electors, or we chose our state electors, and then the national delegates nominate the actual candidates for president, vice president. But anybody can do this that's a registered voter that voted in the primary that year. Please do it. Take part. The more we have take part, the more we're going to have, the more diversity we are going to have, and it happens by default. We don't have to tell you you're included. Just be here. And then you find out how much fun it really is.
All right, Mike. Well, we appreciate you coming by, and I'm sure we'll see you at a bunch of forums and that sort of thing as time goes on. And
we'll be
good luck on that May 6th election.
We'll be at the conservative caucus tomorrow, conservative forum tomorrow night. Kevin Sparks will be our keynote speaker. Yeah, but we'll all be there speaking too. So,
all right, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you.